My name is Bert, and this is the Still Life Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Still Life Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bert. It's been a few weeks, and a lot's happened. The biggest of which is I got COVID, and it sucks. I'm on day 10, so my quarantine is up today. It's been a wild ride. The isolation has been brutal on me mentally. It's taken a toll, and I want to talk about it. I am fortunate to have had fairly mild, effects or symptoms. First couple of days, it just felt like I'd been hit by a train, just aches and pains. I did lose my sense of smell and taste, which was extremely annoying, is still extremely annoying, but it's starting to come back. It's weird. I don't know really how else to explain it. I slept a lot, was just exhausted, had no energy, and the last 3 or 4 days I've just been coughing incessantly, and that's been a pain in the ass for a lot of reasons. So I sound kind of funny, and that's why. But, I didn't make a big deal about it. I didn't really tell a ton of people. Excuse me. For, various reasons. I just didn't tell a lot of people. Didn't want to make a big deal about it. Didn't want it to get politicized or, whatever else. COVID is just one of many things that's, I believe is being used right now in our current world to create division amongst people, especially here in the United States. Vaccine versus no vaccine, mask versus no mask, all this other stuff. We're continually being divided and separated by government entities, and through all this, we should be coming together, especially to support our neighbors that are suffering, that are going through hard times, that aren't well, that do have COVID. We should be rallying around to make sure they get through it instead of hoping that people die because they chose to either get a vaccine or not get a vaccine, or chose to wear a mask or didn't choose to wear a mask. Again, there's all this divisiveness it's just wrong. And we know this at our core, yet we let it continue to divide us. We've got a lot of politicians that have no business being politicians, continuing to create division, because with division comes chaos, and with chaos for them comes more power. I have a very healthy distrust of politicians, pharmaceutical companies, and, anybody in the political arena. I have my own beliefs and values that I hold to and adhere to. Excuse me. And, I go on for days about that stuff, but we are letting politicians continue to divide us. That's a problem. We're giving them this power that, unless we take it back from them, they're going to continue to have. And, how do we take this power back? Well, number one, we just choose to ignore them. Politicians have no rights other than those granted to them by us when we vote them into power. So that's a huge deal. So I'm going to get political, but not here. I'm talking about a few things politically that I think would help change the political landscape and the way that politicians and really everybody gets treated. First and foremost, being a politician was never meant to be a career. And we forget that. These career politicians that have been in 30, 40, 50, 60 years should never happen. Should never happen. Ever, ever, ever. That should never be a thing. And I believe that every position should have term limits. And when you leave politics, you don't get retirement, you don't get health insurance, you don't get all these benefits. You go back to doing whatever it was you were doing before you were a politician. You know, these positions are public service positions. You shouldn't become a millionaire being a politician. It shouldn't be possible. Excuse me. I don't believe there's any politician in office, with maybe exception of the president, that, you know, should be making the amount of money they're making. And they shouldn't at all be allowed to vote for their own pay raises. I mean, gosh, if I got to vote for my own pay raises wherever I'm at, I'd be a freaking millionaire by now. I'm never going to turn down a pay raise for myself. Are you kidding me? You know, so wherever this came from, it needs to be taken away. I believe that if you give politicians the median income for the state that they represent or the state that they come from, I believe that you're going to see huge economic changes. You're going to see policies put into place that benefit the working class individuals. Because what incentive do they have right now to do anything that's going to benefit anyone other than themselves? They don't. They make plenty of money. They have guaranteed benefits. They get retirement when they get out of office. It's just a load of crap. You know, I fully believe that in order to run for president of the United States, you should have to have served time in the military. You know, I know a lot of people will particularly disagree with that one, but how can you be commander-in-chief of the armed forces if you don't have the first clue about how the armed forces work? You know, I also remember being in the service, you know, there are very strict rules and guidelines about performing in political capacities, being in uniform and supporting certain things. Yet the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you know, all these positions, DOD positions, these armed forces members serving in political roles while they're still in the service, you know, bothers me. Then these guys need to be stripped of rank. They need to be retired out or discharged because their actions while in uniform are completely disgraceful. You know, it's really unfortunate. I'm not even going to get into the Afghanistan ordeal. You know, and I have my own feelings on that, but, you know, just do the right thing, you know, do the right thing. How hard is it to do the right thing? Well, when you're surrounded by people doing wrong things, it's very difficult to do the right thing because you're out of the ordinary. You look different when you're doing the right thing. You know, integrity, doing what is right even when no one is watching. And everybody's watching and they're still choosing to do the wrong thing. And there really are no repercussions for it. And that's got to change. How do we hold politicians accountable? Number one, via our votes. But number two, I believe there's ways to take most anything to ballot. To take a politician out of a seat of power or authority. Or to change laws, rules, regulations that politicians have to follow. I believe as a politician, if you so much as receive a penny from any special interest group, corporation, pharmaceutical company, whatever it is, you're no longer eligible to run for office or hold office because you're bought and paid for at that point. You no longer represent the people, you're representing specific interests. This whole thing with, you know, campaign budget, why you should have a multi-million-dollar campaign budget is beyond me. Why you should have a PR team, marketing team, and all this crap is beyond me. You know, everybody lies from the top down, whether it's about themselves, about their opponents, or whatever the case is. It's all lies. And it's really unfortunate because, you see, I've been thinking a lot about this over the last week and a half I've had COVID. You know, it would have been easy for my story to have made headlines. Oh, you know, middle-aged male gets COVID, unvaccinated, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'd be getting death threats. Or to the other side, middle-aged male, vaccinated, gets COVID. I'd be getting death threats because I was or wasn't vaccinated. There's all these lies perpetrated through finances and pharmaceutical companies and, people that don't have our best interests at heart. How do we change that? It's a long process. I see both sides. I understand things on both sides. I agree with things on both sides. But I'm more in the middle than I am on either side. And I feel like that's where so many people are, is that we're not on one extreme side or the other extreme side. We're somewhere in the middle. But because we don't make a whole bunch of noise, nobody cares. And so this silent majority has now become this silent minority because the power's been taken away from us. How do we fix that? How do we get away from that? How do we get back to giving power to the majority of the people? It's a good question, and it's one that I really don't have an answer for. But it's something we should all be thinking about on a day-to-day basis. Let's be honest, we all know we need to clean house. And voting should never be about putting in the lesser of two evils. If we're worried about putting in the lesser of two evils, we have far greater problems on our hands. Don't you think? So as you go through the remainder of this week, remember, think about, how can I change things? How can I change my world and help change the world of others without forcing my views on other people? Because really, at the end of the day, that's what it is. We can agree to disagree, and we can agree to have different beliefs. And that's okay. We've lived this way for over 200 years, and we've done pretty decent. But I feel like we're headed for a world of hurt if we don't get back to a place where compromise and common ground are at the forefront of everything we do. I'd like to thank you for joining me today on the Still Life Podcast. As always, for questions, comments, topic ideas, or suggestions, you can reach us, thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. That's thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at The Still Life Podcast, Twitter at Still Life Pod, and our YouTube channel, The Still Life Podcast. Thanks again for joining me today on The Still Life Podcast. We'll talk again soon.